Good morning and welcome to F4S digital events and today's Maths4Girls career masterclass. Our guest speaker joining us today will be sharing their career story and experiences around maths. We will then invite the audience at home to ask questions. My name is Neelam and I'll be hosting the session today. To the audience at home, your audio, visuals and your chat function have been disabled for safeguarding purposes, but you can still interact with us using the Q&A box. So please do get involved and ask Gemma as many questions as you like about her fascinating career. We are recording the session and it will be featured on our platform and our YouTube channel, so please sit back and enjoy the webinar. So thank you, Gemma, for being with us today and for agreeing to share your story. I think our second speaker, David, is just joining now, which is fantastic. Hi, David.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome. So I've just done a little introduction. So we are now live, and our audience are sort of beaming in from up and down the country to listen to yours and Gemma's career journey and career story. So what we'll do is we'll hand over to Gemma first, if that's okay. So Gemma, just sort of spend about 7-8 minutes talking about your story, where you started off and how you got to where you are today. And your sort of experiences around maths growing up and you know, whether you liked it, whether you enjoyed it at school, what were your experiences of maths. And I suppose what we're really trying to achieve here is we want to instill confidence. So we want our young people watching today thinking, you know what, I will give maths a go, and there is a career out there for me if I was to opt for maths. So do you want to take it away, and then we'll hand over to David, and then we'll move over to a bit of a Q&A session. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Yes. So hello, everyone watching. Thanks for tuning in. I do the Founders for School events in person normally. So I'm based in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. That's where I grew up, and I went through the traditional way of school. So I went to primary school and to high school and then on to do A-levels and university. So I'll start with high school really, because I don't remember much primary school and maths and that, but high school I definitely wasn't mathematically minded. So I was much more history, English and French, that sort of thing. So I always had to work really hard at maths, and I was never in the top set. I was always sort of second or third, but I was just steady. I had a good maths teacher in high school called Mr. Kemp, and he really helped me. And one of the things that I knew I had to do was just to continue to ask questions, because my brain didn't really, it didn't come easily to me. So then between my GCSEs and my A-levels, I won a scholarship and I went to America for a year. So I lived in Oregon on the west coast of America, and I went to a high school in America and did lots of subjects that I didn't do back at home. So I did photography, and I ran cross country. I learned to drive, and I came back and I did my A-levels, and I did A-levels in English literature, geography and biology. And then I went down to London and I studied English. So as you can see, I was always not on the side of maths. However, my career journey, I'm now a sort of a lead project manager. So I look after a team of people within an IT company, and I do have to use maths quite a lot to make sure that our budgets align and we forecast the budget side of things. So I have done sort of courses in to help me to look at budgets and things as well. So I've sort of had an ongoing journey with maths. Working within the IT business, it's quite a male-dominated business. So it's sort of 20% women, 80% men, and I do find that a lot of my male counterparts are much better at maths than me. So I will always ask them for help and work together with them on things like budgeting. And I always say that if you are struggling, then find someone who is good at it, because there's no need really for you to struggle with complicated things. You can ask someone, and what I do is find someone who's really good at explaining things quite simply. So what might appear a big problem in maths, if you break it down into small chunks and ask someone who's really good at explaining it to you to do it, who's got patience, then that's really good. My dad's really good at maths, so I often go to him and say, I've got this kind of complex thing that I need to work out, Dad, how would you approach it? And he just takes me through, and he's got the time because he's retired to spend. So I think I never had much confidence with maths, but I've learned that I don't need to know all of the extremely complicated things. I just need the skills that allow me to do my job. And I always ask people to help me. And I'm not afraid of asking people, because they, don't judge you. And I find that a lot of the other skill sets that I have, I can help them. So I'm kind of much better with resourcing and communicating with people. So they'll come to me and say, Gemma, I really need you to pull together these people for me and get this task done. And so I'll do that. And they're quite happy to help me with things that perhaps I'm not as strong as. So that's my journey. I never, in terms of what I wanted to do, I was never really sure. So hence why I did geography, biology, and English A level, but I was always stronger on the English side of things. And what I would say is, if you have something that you feel passionately about, or if someone says, you're quite a caring person, you can follow the things that you are good at as well, because and that you care about. So it's kind of things that you care about and that you're passionate about, you're often quite good at. So it's always good to follow that path. And there's a lot more advice out there now. And when I was growing up, it was kind of, you do something vocational or you go to university. So if you're academic, you went to university. If you weren't, but now it's not as black and white as that. There's so many things you can do. There's so many more jobs you can do now than when I was growing up. And so, but I think my advice would be, if you can have a little bit of a plan, that helps as well, because I didn't really have much of a plan. And I think maybe for some years I was kind of, oh, well, I could do that and I could do that. Whereas if I look back, I think if I'd taken some time and made a bit of a plan, that would have helped me. So that's my journey. Sorry if I've rambled on, but
no, you're fine. Thank you, Gemma. I know these I know the in-person encounters that you've had probably feel a lot different to the webinars, but no, still such a good learning opportunity. Thank you. So what I would say is, I mean, you were fortunate. You said you had a really good maths teacher, and your dad as well is quite good at maths, and you could always sort of lean on him. Now, a lot of our young people, I mean, some young people perhaps are sitting there thinking, well, I don't have that a really good maths teacher, or I don't have a relationship with my teacher, or I don't have a role model in my life, which is why we have, you guys talking to young people. What would you say to a young person who doesn't seem to have support available in a physical form, I would say, especially during sort of the lockdown, season, if you like? What would you say to a young person who requires support and doesn't know where to get that support from when it comes to developing confidence in maths?
So I think you can always ask your peers. So if you've got in these times where we are a bit sort of more virtual, I know that everyone will be speaking to their friends a lot, using technology, and you can always ask your friends for help or what they do, or maybe if they've got someone that supports them, you could tap into that knowledge. I know that there's a lot of information online, but sometimes that can be confusing as well because there's so much. I think the best thing is to just get some feedback from your people around you. Everyone's got a network, and reach out to them first. And I'm sure that young people also have kind of support tools that are that are sort of registered tools as well. So I think it's always good to try to go with those sources of information that you know are sort of good sources of information, or ask people. And I know it's hard, but I always just say ask the question, and you'll always kind of find someone who can point you in the right direction. And I'm sure people have got quite a lot of support from their teachers as well online. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask the question, because it's not until you ask that you'll find that. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask. And there is a lot of information out there. It's just getting the best source, isn't it? The right source.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Now, Gemma, what we'll do is I'm going to hand over to David, and then we'll come back for some more questions, because I've got a bit of a list of questions here. So
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you again for sharing. David, over to you. So if you could just do the same, really, spend sort of about 7 minutes talking about your journey as well. That'd be great.
Okay, no problems. Well, thanks very much for inviting me onto this webinar. My story is not actually dissimilar to Gemma's, apart from I'm probably the guy who would ask Gemma rather than Gemma asking a guy. So my journey with maths really was fine at primary. I remember that. And when I got to secondary, I'll be honest, I was the middle kid. I was in the middle classes all the way through, and in fact, I was probably a bit of a joker, and I didn't really apply myself. And the reason for that was that I was in a very fortunate position, I think, although it actually turned out to be very, very fortunate, in that my father had his own business, and I just assumed I was going to go and work for him. However, that all came crashing down when I asked him at the Christmas before I was due to leave in the September how much he was going to pay me, and he told me nothing, and I had to go away and do some on my own and prove it. And once I'd done that, then he'd have a conversation with me. So, I don't know why I'd never had that conversation earlier, or he hadn't had it with me, but it kind of then made everything kind of come into sharp focus very, very quickly. The problem I had, like Gemma, I was very fond of English, and I had on the opposite side, I had a terrible maths teacher. And and in fact she was called Miss May, and we all used to call her Dismay. She was terrible, and she was about 100 years old back then, and she kind of struggled to make that. I'm reasonably old, and she kept talking in imperial, and I was a metric kid, but only just, and so I was getting very confusing messages of inches and yards, and it just confused the heck out of me. And so once my world kind of got realigned, and I realized that I didn't have an automatic job, I had to do something. And so I didn't know where to turn either. It was, I couldn't go to school. That just wasn't it. I couldn't talk to my friends about it. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. But I ended up getting some maths tuition outside of school, which really kind of helped. Didn't help me enough because I still bombed, and but not as badly as I might have done. And what then happened, in fact, I bombed quite a few of my exams, so I ended up having to do resits, which meant when I went to college, I could only do 2 A levels rather than 3. And so, you know, I worked really hard, and so I did law and Greek literature at A level, and did my resits. And maths, once I kind of got my head into it, I realized that having a bad teacher wasn't the end of the world. You know, I had a good tutor outside of school, and she kind of brought it alive for me. And it became apparent to me that it was just very logical. And, you know, once I kind of grasped the fact that, you know, it wasn't rocket science, although I suppose it could well be, but you know, it was really just a very kind of logical approach to understanding and problem solving. And then, sure enough, I got my resits, and you know, that was it. And like Gemma, funnily enough, I also work in IT, and of course, you know, I find that maths is a key part of what we do, every element of it, you know, whether you're talking about coding or where I sit more in the security piece, you know, but also running the business. You know, I have to be familiar with budgeting, spreadsheets, sales forecasts, you know, all of that. So again, whilst a lot of the maths that I may have used, you know, throughout my education, and certainly the latter part of it may not be what I use today, it still formed the foundation and helped me with the understanding of what I needed to do and what I'd still do. So yeah, that's a 50-cent tour.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Now, for anyone watching at home, I'd love to just know a little bit more about what you currently do, as in what you do sort of day to day. So if we've got a young person watching who thinks, I would love to run my own business, so you are the co-founder, is that correct, of CyberWhite Limited? So
Yes.
what does it take to run a business? And I know that could be a massive question, but could you just try to condense it down into maybe a minute of information?
Yeah, I think firstly, you've got to have the passion and belief that you can do something better, and perhaps from a different perspective than anybody else, and have a single-minded focus and determination to make it happen. That you need a lot of different skills to do that, of course, and maths being a prime one, really. But yeah, that's the driver for me.
Yeah. And so I know, Gemma, you touched on budgeting. David, how do you use maths on a daily basis, would you say? Do you have any examples where you have to use it?
Yeah, I mean, I live in spreadsheets. You know,
Yeah.
that is my it's kind of another world that, you know, everything lives in there. And so, you know, we're constantly checking but pretty much everything. I mean, we're funny if we're in a bit of a migration at the moment. So we you know, our master budget resides on a spreadsheet, and there's some quite complicated formula behind some of that, because there's, you know, what if scenarios and all that kind of stuff, and then we kind of assess the difference between technology type sales and solution consultancy type sales, and we're looking at margins, at different margins and contributions to the business. So yeah, there's quite a lot. And then of course, when you're bringing in the sale and you're looking at the invoice, and it's not just a case of, well, you know, it cost us £10 and we sold it for £12, so we've got £2. You then got to look at that and say, well, what element goes out to the overhead? You know, what goes for corporation tax? What goes, you know, so you, what goes to VAT? So you constantly applying to different pots and managing those as well. So there is a lot to it. Yeah, just one element.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. So, sort of same question then for Gemma. What I'd love to know is, what I'd love to understand is, what does a typical day look like for a portfolio manager at DXC Technology? So Gemma, like, what are your hours like? You know, what do you, I know it probably is a little bit different now that you might be working from home, but typically, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm working from my kitchen at the moment. My daughter is next door doing her schoolwork, I hope. And typical day, my hours are around sort of 8:30 to 5:30. on a normal day, I've got 5 project managers who report up to me, so I help them with all of the projects. So we've got about 70 projects, and we're a public sector account. So examples of public sector are things like the NHS, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, that's sort of the government departments. So I'm on a government account, and we deploy software to users. So we might be deploying a piece of software that enables them to host a call like this. So it might be like a Microsoft Teams piece of software.
Right. Okay.
So my typical day would be helping the project managers to do that, and that involves quite a lot of things that go wrong. So when things go wrong, the project managers pick up the phone and say, Gemma, I've got a problem and I need your help. So I'll reach out to the relevant team. So it might be, I might have to reach out to a technical person, but more often than not, it's calls with the customer who's not happy that things have gone wrong. So I have to let the customer know, here's the plan. This is where we're going to get the project back on track, and this is when we're going to do it. So yeah, I get the phone calls when things go wrong, and I also just help to support the project managers in doing their schedules, their forecasting, their budgets, anything around the sort of project life cycle, sort of closing projects off, getting approvals, and then all of the other stuff that goes on around the account as well. So it's quite varied. You have to juggle quite a lot of plates, and sometimes it's really difficult to focus on one thing. That's what I was going to say as well. I'm reading a book at the moment that's called Deep Work, and it says that in today's society, we're just distracted. So, and my job is a prime example of that. I might be working on something, might be doing a forecast. So I'm on a spreadsheet like David, and I'm plugging in my figures. And then all of a sudden I get a message, Gemma, problem. So I'm pulled off my spreadsheet, and my day is very distracted. So I find it really difficult to do that deep work on something. But I think if you struggle with maths, sometimes the best thing that you can do, if you've got one particular area, or even if you've got a lot of areas, break them down and just don't be distracted. So get yourself into your room for an hour and say, right, I'm going to work on this for an hour, and I'm not going to, if my friend messages me or someone Skypes me or someone rings, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to focus for an hour on that problem, and at the end of the hour I'll put it away and I'll do something else. But there is quite a lot of evidence to suggest that if you do that deep work, as it's called, that focused work, let's say, and you don't allow yourself to be distracted, you're actually going to grasp the concept. And I know that does work for me. So yeah, thank you for the reminder, because I wanted to say that. Focus and just don't be distracted. And then you might find the next day, oh, actually that concept, I actually understand that now. Oh, I'm going to try that with something else I'm struggling with. Even if it's an hour, 2 hours, you know, more than that, you know, we're not used to doing that in-depth work anymore, because we live in such a society where we've got all these things coming at us from all angles. We're just used to sort of short bite-sized bits, but sometimes there's a lot of evidence to suggest that if you focus on something, it might actually help. So it's just a trick.
And I suppose it's trial and error as well. And when I was teaching a few years ago, and we said, you know, try the 20-minute, 10-minute method. So, you know, deep work, deep study, deep revision, whatever it might be, for 20 minutes and a little 10-minute break, and then again. And for some people, it took them 5-10 minutes to get into the swing of that, and then the time's up. For other people, you know, spend 40 minutes trying to solve an equation or a mathematical problem, and then have maybe a 10-minute rest or a 15-minute rest. But I think trial and error is so important, because we are all individual, aren't we? And we all learn differently. Now,
absolutely.
You touched on something really important there, Gemma. So you said that it can be quite distracting, and sometimes being pulled in different sort of, you know, areas and sections and all of these things can be quite problematic and quite challenging. Now, I think that is a skill that people that you've definitely would have developed by now, but adaptability and agility are really, really important, I would say. But what other skills are important for the jobs of tomorrow? What skills should young people really be trying to equip themselves with entering the job market?
Communication skills are, I think everything comes down to how you communicate with people, and if you're trusted by people. And you often find that people who are quite calm and who listen. One of my old bosses said to me, Gemma, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And if you really take the time to listen to people, you'll find that you can solve their problems easier, or you can help them. So good communication skills, listening to people, enjoying what you do, having fun, you know, look for the fun in things, because you'll always find that humour lightens every situation. I don't mean that you'll go to work to have to play around, but you've got to find the fun in your work as well. And otherwise, what's the point? Yeah, so I would say that those are kind of key skills.
Yeah, great. And can I ask the same question to David? So do you have anything else to add, David, in terms of the skills that young people need to equip themselves with?
I think the key one that, and Gemma's already mentioned, is listening. Yeah. And I find it fascinating that of all the things we teach in school, listening isn't one of them.
Very true.
And it is so important. You know, I think, you know, I think back to when I was 16, 17, 18, and you know, and you always think, or most of us, I think, maybe it's more of a boy thing, I don't know, but you kind of think you know it all. You know, you think you've been there, you've done it, and you know, you're invincible, but actually, yeah, experience teaches you different. And so yeah, I think listen, soak it all in, and you know, it may not all make sense now. I'm a firm believer. I write everything down, you know, and I revisit stuff. I learn by I listen, I write, and then I revisit, and I read, and I absorb, and for me that works. We're all different, and I think we've just got to try and find ways. I think we do become very distracted. We live in a very, I think Gemma said, you know, bite-sized consumption society. You know, phones go. You know, I find that incredibly rude, actually, when you talk to somebody and they go, oh, text, and look the other way, and I think, no, you're having a conversation with me. Stop it. You know, I made a rule some time ago. I used to be terrible. I used to answer emails as soon as they came in. Now I check my emails twice a day. Yeah, if it's important, somebody's going to phone me, right? You know, I don't have to respond to a text instantly. If it's important, somebody will call me. You know, the rest of it is just, you know, half it's rubbish anyway, right? And so it's about prioritizing, learn to listen and prioritize.
Excellent. Great. So yes, really, really useful tips and sort of life lessons as well, not just career development sort of advice there. So thank you to the both of you. We are sadly out of time. So it's amazing how quick 30 minutes can go when you're listening and sort of learning new things about different worlds of work. But yeah, I really enjoyed interviewing you both. So thank you so much for your time. To the audience at home, you will be sent a little feedback survey. So please let us know how we got on. We're constantly looking at new ways of sort of improving our services here at F4S Digital. So we are also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter and Instagram. So please do follow us and look out for what we have coming up. So speaking of what we have coming up, tomorrow we've got our next session. It's a keynote career speech at 2 o'clock, where we will be joined by Ian Funnell from Hitachi ABB Power Grids, delivering a talk all about his work there. So thank you again, Gemma and David, for your time. Look out for the video. I'll ping it across to you once it's done. And yeah, really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
An in-person encounter very soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.